matrix prime directive timeline reboot part of wrong dominant coexisting timeline fix attempts Schumann resonance chart shows timeline reboot data loss 5 more C flares from sunspots 2,816 and 281,719 total M and C flares from April the 19th to 23rd. 2021 Geomagnetic Storm is Day 8 of Geomagnetic Storms and Unrest Run April 23, 2021 Core Matrix, Time Shift, Solar Repeth. Please read the previous reports to better understand the material in this report. My reports are part of series of connected reports. Just come to my page. Be sure to refresh the page to see all of the posts and scroll down. Today, April the 23rd, 2021, the Core Matrix Prime Directive engaged in a timeline reboot of our planet. This timeline reboot also included, as it often does, surrounding areas of space that include our solar system and possibly beyond. Why? What has happened? Was the time-looping planet-ending nuke problem triggered again, and so a resurrecting timeline reboot was needed? Not exactly, although it's related. The last time that I was able to document a timeline reboot was on March the 26th, 2021. That's a little less than a month ago, which is a really short span between such drastic core matrix prime directive activity. Despite the recent uptick in time shift triggering solar activity and the series of related core matrix timeline edits that followed, since March the 26th, 2021, I have not seen direct time looping conditions that would warrant a timeline reboot. These conditions are present prior to the March 26, 2021 timeline reboot. To review, a timeline edit involves the core matrix altering of coexisting timeline through a series of timeline edits. These timeline edits lead to our getting a new dominant coexisting timeline. A timeline reboot happens when the planet is actually literally destroyed, and the core matrix prime directive kicks in to put us back together. It's a resurrection. Just like with a timeline edit, after a timeline reboot we get a new dominant coexisting timeline. I believe I understand what's going on with the core matrix. Given what is going on with the planet, involving our being in the wrong dominant coexisting timeline, the core matrix determined that just enacting timeline edits was not enough to fix our being in the wrong dominant coexisting timeline. It must have realized some sort of positive result from the March 26, 2021 timeline reboot. Now include a timeline reboot as a means toward a possible fix. Remember, this wrong dominant coexisting timeline is not sustainable. The longer it lasts, as a dominant coexisting timeline, the more assured it is that the entire planet will fall to a time-looping event from which we cannot recover under any circumstances. I've attached 3 images, which are part of the evidence that I have concerning today's core matrix prime directive timeline reboot. It isn't possible to put all of the evidence here for obvious reasons. But what I am sharing is information that should be familiar to folks who follow my reports and work. 1. April the 23rd, 2021, this STO image shows the sunspots and the 5 C flares and coronal mass ejections that happened today. Since the April 19, 2021 solar flares and the eruption number is now up to 19 flares and CMES. This represents a huge uptick in solar activity, as newish solar cycle 25 carries ON.2. April the 23rd, 2021, this K-index chart shows that another geomagnetic storm hit the Earth today. This was preceded by 2 days of geomagnetic unrest, which in turn was preceded by 7 days of geomagnetic storms. This is important because geomagnetic storms as well as geomagnetic unrest are markers that timeline edits are happening on the planet. I say time shift markers because geomagnetic storms do not trigger time shifts or timeline edits or timeline reboots. They are markers because the same solar energy that triggers a geomagnetic storm or unrest is the same solar energy that triggers time shifts. In turn, the core matrix uses the time shift event to enact timeline edits and sometimes reboots. 3. April the 23rd, 2021, this Schumann resonance chart shows an 11-hour black zone on April the 23rd, 2021. This type of black zone was present with the last known timeline reboot. While this sort of black zone represents a major data loss, the cause of the 11-hour data loss is the core matrix prime directive timeline reboot. Although not shown here, many April the 22nd, 2021 and April the 23rd, 2021 SOHO images also show corresponding data loss. Click like if you saw and understand the message. If you want to reply, be mindful of what you write. No trigger words or names, even if you misspell them. This includes